Very good morning from me, Kevin Owen. You're watching RT International, and what a big day of celebrations is about to officially kick off here in the Russian capital, marking the 70th anniversary of victory over Nazism. Exactly 70 years ago today, Russia woke up to the glorious news that the war, at last, was over. Well, here on RT International, we'll be bringing you our special coverage marking one of the biggest days in the Russian calendar. And we've got a lot of guests as well. We've got a lot of camera shots to look at and a lot of guests to talk about what we're seeing. It's going to be spectacular. In this scenario, our senior political correspondent with us. And we've also got Sergei Savchenko as well to talk us through it. Sergei, coming back to you in a second. I just want 20 seconds for you in this about your thoughts about what's to come.
Well, like you said, this is one of the biggest days, if not the biggest, in the Russian calendar. And especially this year, 70 years since the Great Patriotic War, that's what Russians call it, or Soviet people, and I think it's a pretty good shot that this is going to be one of the most spectacular parades in modern Russian history.
We're just taking a look at Red Square at the moment. All right, let's go over to Sergei Savchenko. Your thoughts, highlights to come in a potted way.
Well, my thoughts about it is that we have a lot of expectations from this parade, basically for the reason that it will put on display quite a lot of new material, new equipment. The star of the show will be certainly Armata, tank and APC, and plus we'll have some other vehicles which are absolutely novel.
We want you to stay put with us for the next hour and a half or so. There's an awful lot to come, and so we've got the best vantage point, and our correspondents are out as well. Neil Harvey and Igor Piskunov. Let's go first of all to Neil Harvey. Lucky to have, as I say, the best view. You're right down amidst it all there on Red Square. And of course, Igor Piskunov in what we'll call the backstage area. First of all, though, if I can come to you, Neil, take us through what we're about to see.
Good morning to you, Kevin. I just want to start by saying it's an incredible scene here. I mean, complete silence on Red Square. There must be close to 20,000 people here right now, and it's bated breath because everybody's waiting for that clock on Spasskaya Tower to strike 10 o'clock, which it will do any moment now. Then it will all begin. Of course, as you would expect, it's a strong sense of remembrance, of dignity and of respect for all those millions who sacrificed so much so many years ago, many of them making the ultimate sacrifice, losing their lives. Things will build, though, to a bit of a crescendo, though. We'll see 16,000 troops marching behind me across Red Square. We're going to see a display of military hardware, those tanks from the past, the T-34s that helped defeat the Germans, and also the most modern equipment that Russia hopes will secure it in the future.
Yeah, thanks for that. Now, it is exactly 10 o'clock, the parade about to start. I just want a very, very quick word from Igor before we dip into it. Who's made it here today, the dignitaries, really briefly, before we get on with it?
Well, Kevin, Russia sent out invitations to about 70 world leaders and senior officials. Around half of them are attending this parade. Earlier, President Putin personally greeted his Chinese counterpart, also UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. We know also that the Indian, Palestinian, and Egyptian leaders are here, authorities from many CIS countries as well, which just goes to show how international this date is, really.
Yeah, okay, guys. Well, thank you for that for now. As I say, it's 10 o'clock. You can see the, or we can see it, you can see it now too, the clock, that famous clock at the Kremlin, just striking 10 o'clock. And so, guys, of course, Sergei, this is now when the military parade officially starts. What can we expect to see?
First, we will have to see certain organizations, like the marksmen will have to mark the positions for the lines of the parade, which is very important.
We're getting that big voice as well. That big opening voice.
Commanding General ordering the banner to be brought in. As you can see, it's the banner of the parade.
For the victory banner.
The victory banner, sorry, the official flag of the Russian Federation, and plus the flag of the of the armed forces.
Now, this banner, I gather, was raised by the soldiers on the Reichstag building in Berlin as it was taken by the Soviet army. That's the history of it, yeah?
Absolutely. That's historical.
Now, when you look closely at it there, you can see it's a scarlet banner, if you look in very closely, with a silver sickle and a star, and the Cyrillic inscription of the name of the division that hoisted the banner at the time. Symbolises, doesn't it, Sergei, the victory of Soviet people against Nazi Germany, the history of it all?
This is absolutely true. As you would also know, there were several banners issued to the attacking forces, and there was quite a bit of competition for the troops to be the first to capture Reichstag and to hoist the banner of victory.
We say believe because there's no film and no video ever, well, obviously no video, but no film or photo taken of it at the time to actually prove that, but that is the general belief that it was hoisted above the Reichstag on the night of the 30th of April 1945.
Kevin, I'm not surprised that there is no video for that.
Of course.
Can you imagine an operator taking a picture of somebody hoisting a flag on the Reichstag amid the battle? That would be impossible.
Yeah. But it's also said the banner was made right on the battlefield as well. Another bit of history, mystique, whatever you want to call it, that goes with this banner. That it was an improvised national flag of the Soviet Union, as I say, made on the battlefield. Have you heard that story as well? There's a number of stories behind this.
There are very many stories about that indeed, but the significance of this flag is very great because it's a victory flag and it's replicated in many ways, and it is on display in the Russian Soviet Army Museum, and it's like a shrine for the Russian people.
Now we're seeing it being carried, well, we were earlier on, behind the Russian flag. It now seems to have moved, but I mean during Victory Day parades normally a copy of this victory banner, so it goes, is carried immediately behind the Russian flag. It depends which shot you're looking at it. But at the moment it looks like it's being carried in front of it. That's normal protocol, yeah?
It's normal protocol because everything has to be done according to protocol. I'm talking about the color detail and all the other things. It's a protocol.
Now the original banner, this is what we're talking about, it interestingly as well, is kept in the Central Museum of the Armed Forces in Moscow. That's always kept safe.
Absolutely.
Lovely day for it as well. We're going to talk about that. It's always a lovely day on May Day for the celebration.
Looking at this weather.
You're smiling wryly about that slightly.
I always get a little choked up when I watch this parade, to be honest. I think it's almost hard to put into words what the people on Red Square certainly may be feeling. I was there for the 65th anniversary, and it's almost indescribable, the feeling. You know, we're getting a little taste of it, and you can get an idea of it through your television screens, but it's very hard to pass on what people on Red Square right now are feeling, I assume, especially those veterans in the stands.
65th was big. 70th, they say this is the biggest one yet. Early days, but where does it go from here? Will the memories fade? Will the parades get bigger as we get closer towards the 100th anniversary? Where's it going to go?
That's a very big question. Frankly, I cannot offer any. I can only have some suggestions, but I'm not sure about what's going to happen afterwards.
I think in light of all that we're seeing happening in modern-day geopolitics, it's a very important question now. What happens to the legacy of World War II when, one, the people who witnessed it are fewer and fewer each year, and when there is clear attempts to rewrite history?
Yeah. I mean, we're still saying there are nigh on 200,000 veterans, Soviet veterans still alive in Russia today. But of course, as the years pass, you see less and less. Just pointing out to our viewers, Sergei Shoigu, the defense minister. Now, tell us what's happening here.
What's happening now? It's there will be two things happening. First of all, the Minister of Defense is going to receive a report from the parade commanding general, and following that there would be an inspection of troops, and everybody is commanded to stand at attention, as you'd appreciate, and unit by unit they will pass by them and they will greet them. It's an official inspection of the parade, and they will certainly give them greetings. and they will certainly respond as it normally happens. As you can see it.
Plus, every time I see this, because I was brought up in Britain, I guess no great surprise there. Obviously, this was covered there back in Soviet and communist times as well. It brings back some memories. You see these big cars, big Zils in the day, weren't they? Are they still Zils they're driving? What are those cars, the official cars these days? Well, the Mercedes, I can't quite see. So, this is the official inspection now. Yes. President Vladimir Putin's about to speak at some time in the next 10 minutes, I guess.
Yeah, but he will be the main speaker naturally, and he can only speak after the commanding general of the parade and the Ministry of Defense have inspected the troops, and they will actually report to the president that troops are ready for the parade, for the march past, and that will inaugurate the speech.
Been a lot of conversation about the state of the armed forces in recent years. But there's been a lot of investment in recent years as well now, hasn't there?
Well, this is true. This is true, and I think the presence of so many pieces of new inventory also stand testimony to that. And we will see quite a lot of, we'll have quite a lot of surprises during the parade, especially when the military materiel rolls past the Red Square, past the reviewing stand.
You talked of surprises. Again, some information hasn't been let out about what we're going to see. There's a lot of talk about the Armata tank. It could be a fully robotic tank in the future. Lighter, safer for the people operating it, apparently. Way forward, everyone's saying. Well, certainly in Russia, anyway. Have you seen this tank, the details of it, the spec of it?
Well, I can say a few words about Armata. I can tell you that this is certainly a new generation of tanks. And it has very many new principles applied for this tank. The number one principle is that the crew is now separated in a separate airtight capsule, armor capsule, from the armaments. This is thing number one, which also permits to have more opportunities for firepower.
Well, we're going to see that tank in full shortly. I was saying this, when you're looking at this, it does put the hair on the back of your neck slightly on edge, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Even if you're not a military person, even if indeed you're
Which
not
I am not, indeed.
Indeed. Well, neither particularly am I, but seeing this, it really is amazing, and the planning, the preparation that goes into this. We were actually saying this morning, we've put a lot of planning and preparation into this, but imagine the guy or the lady in charge, or the person that's in charge of this. They must have had some sleepless nights.
Yeah, a lot of work goes in this parade. They start rehearsing weeks before.
Of course, something that a lot of people in Europe don't fully appreciate the story behind. Victory in Europe Day is always marked yesterday on the 8th. Here in Russia, it's marked on the 9th. Now, that's purely a time thing, isn't it? Because Russia was 2 hours behind Europe. And
it's not a political decision.
No, Victory Day marking the formal surrender of Nazi Germany to the Allied forces. And it happened. I'm just going to be quiet because you've got a key moment coming.
Addresses the airborne forces, railway troops, the military units of the Western Military District, the troops of the Interior Ministry, military units of the Emergencies Ministry, and the Federal Security Service.
Yeah, going back to what we were saying there, Germany, of course, signed its capitulation late on the 8th of May. It's actually 22:43 Central European time. Of course, in Moscow, being 2 hours ahead, it was already the 9th of May there. So let's just explain to our viewers, if they didn't already know, and that's why it's a day later. Simple as that. Germany's military surrender, of course, famously announced in Britain by Winston Churchill on the 8th of May, a day after it was signed by Hitler's successor. Hitler had already committed suicide, of course, then, by that time. The Soviet Union then waited till a formal surrender ceremony was held in Berlin. That happened the 9th of May, Moscow time. So the inspection of the troops, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force continues.
It is continuing. It's not only Army, Navy, and Air Force. They would also come to inspect the guest troops coming from some of the countries, which are also taking part in the parade.
And this, as we watch this, it's important to remember, as well as the pomp, the ceremony, the parade, as well as remembering the veterans, all those 4 million souls that died. It's also about a whole generation, 3 generations or more ago now, who saved the world from Nazism.
It is, and I think a big question as we celebrate this 70-year anniversary is this sacrifice that the Soviet people made appreciated around the world? And a lot of people would say, unfortunately, that it is underestimated.
But we're talking about relevance and how you make it relevant, and this is the 70th anniversary now that we see unfolding in front of our eyes, the biggest parade ever. As we head towards the 80th, as we head towards the centenary of it, where's it going to go? How do you keep the young people?
I think that's a challenge not only for Western countries, which didn't exactly have war on their territory like in America, but in Russia as well. How do you pass on the significance of what Russian forefathers went through once they're gone, the people that witnessed the war? This is a big thing because we're coming to the point in history where there will be no one left who actually took part in the war. We cannot underestimate that fact as we come to this anniversary.
But equally, as a foreigner coming to work here, you cannot underestimate as well the generations, the youngsters, the grandchildren, the old people. They're all so involved in this. Now, there's President Putin. He's about to speak. We've got a translation of it. Let's hand you over to hear what President Putin is going to say this Victory Day, the 70th anniversary, watching live here in Moscow on RT International.
At ease.
Уважаемые граждане России, дорогие ветераны,
Dear veterans,
уважаемые гости,
dear guests,
товарищи солдаты и матросы,
soldiers and
сержанты
seamen,
и старшины,
surgeons and petty
мичманы и
officers,
прапорщики,
warrant
товарищи
officers
офицеры,
and commissioned
генералы и
officers,
адмиралы.
generals and admirals.
Поздравляю вас с 70-летием Победы.
Today we mark the
Великой
70th
Отечественной
anniversary of
войне.
victory in the Great
Сегодня,
Patriotic War.
отмечая эту
Today, as
священную
we
юбилейную дату,
celebrate this date,
мы
which is
вновь
sacred to
осознаем
us,
всю
once again
грандиозность
we
победы над
realize how immense this victory over Nazism was.
что именно наши
And we
отцы
are
и
proud
деды
that it was
смогли
our
одолеть
fathers and grandfathers who
и уничтожить
defeated
эту темную силу.
this dark force.
Гитлеровская авантюра стала ужасным уроком.
This was a terrible lesson for the entire
Тогда, в 30-е
international
годы
community,
прошлого
what
века,
happened in the
просвещенная
1930s.
Европа не сразу увидела
The
смертоносную
enlightened
угрозу
Europe
в
did not
идеологии
see
нацизма.
immediately the immense threat of
сейчас,
the Nazi
спустя 70
ideology.
лет,
And today,
история вновь
70
взывает
years
к нашему
later,
разуму и к нашей
history
бдительности.
once again tells us
Мы не должны
to be
забывать,
vigilant.
что идея
We should not
расового
forget that the
превосходства
idea
и
of
исключительности
race
привели к
supremacy
самой кровопролитной войне.
and exclusivity
В неё
resulted
было вовлечено почти
in
80%
the bloody
населения
East
Земли.
War, which involved about 80% of the
Оккупированы многие государства
world's
Европы.
population. Many European
Советский Союз
nations were
принял на
occupied,
себя
and the
самые
Soviet
жестокие
Union
удары
bore
врага.
the brunt of
Сюда были стянуты отборные
enemy
группировки
attacks.
нацистов.
The best
Сосредоточена вся их
Nazi troops were
военная
sent
мощь.
to Russia.
Здесь проходили
Their
крупнейшие
military
по
might
количеству
was
войск и
concentrated
техники,
here.
решающие битвы Второй
Decisive
мировой.
battles of World War II took
И
place here.
закономерно, что именно
It is
Красная
no surprise
армия
that it
в
was
результате
the Red
сокрушительного
Army
штурма Берлина
eventually
поставила победную
besieged
точку в
Berlin
войне с
and put
гитлеровской
an end to this war with Nazi
За свободу
Germany.
родной земли боролся весь многонациональный народ.
Our entire nation fought for the freedom of our land. Everybody contributed to this victory, and together our people saved our homeland
Определили исход Второй мировой
and
войны.
determined the outcome of World War II. liberated the nations of Europe from Nazism. No matter where veterans live today, they should know that here in Russia, we will always remember what they did, how valiantly they fought in this war. Dear friends, this great victory will forever remain a glorious page in the history of our country, but we also remember our allies in the anti-Nazi coalition. We are grateful to people of the United Kingdom and France, the United States of America, for their contribution to this victory. We are also grateful to anti-fascist forces in various countries fighting Nazism, including in Germany itself. We remember how Allies met on the Elbe River and how we fought together. This was a good example of nations joining their forces for the sake of peace and stability. These values became the foundation of the post-war world order. The United Nations was set up. The modern system of international law was formed. These institutions proved to be efficient in resolving conflicts and disputes. However, during the last decade, the basic fundamental principles of international cooperation are increasingly ignored. We saw attempts to set up a unipolar world order. We see the use of force. This kind of mentality undermines global stability. We should work together to produce a system of equal security for all nations, which would address modern threats efficiently. Should be based on non-block principles of stability. Only this will allow us to ensure peace on the whole planet. Dear friends, today we welcome all our foreign guests here, and we express our appreciation to representatives of countries that fought Nazism and the Japanese militarism, and there will be troops from 10 more nations parading on Red Square today. Azerbaijan, Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. Their grandfathers and great-grandfathers fought together on the front lines, and in the rear we will see a delegation from China. They lost many millions of people in this war, and it was in China where the decisive battles against the Japanese militarism was fought. Also, India, Serbia made an important contribution throughout the whole war. Mongolia supported our country, and today grandsons of that generation will march on Red Square together. This is our joint anniversary. The entire mankind fought Nazism. Our forefathers, our grandfathers fought and worked extremely hard, sacrificed their lives. This was true heroism and patriotism, and we appreciate the people who fought from house to house for every town, who died in the battles of Moscow and Stalingrad, Kursk, and on the Dnieper River, who died in the besieged Leningrad, who died in concentration camps under German occupation. We bow our heads to commemorate our sons, daughters, fathers, mothers, grandfathers, grandmothers, friends, relatives, everybody who did not come back from that war, everybody who is no longer present with us here today. Let us now have a moment of silence.
Дорогие наши ветераны,
Our dear veterans,
вы главные герои
you are
Великого
the
дня
main
Победы.
heroes on Victory
Ваш
Day.
подвиг
What you did
предопределил мирную,
determined
достойную жизнь для многих
a
поколений.
peaceful outcome for many, many generations, afforded us an opportunity to live our lives. Today, your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren continue what you did. They labor for their homeland. They serve their motherland. They address modern challenges and secure successful development for our motherland, our Russia. Glory to our people who won this war. This is a great day, the great victory. Happy Victory Day to you all. We now hear the Russian national anthem.
What a stirring piece of music that is, Anissa, every time we hear it. Sergei Savchenko, joined by you as well, our military commentator, to take us through what's happening over the next, still to go hour or so, because the march is about to start, the big parade. Anissa, let's just talk while we watch the various military regiments, all in those strict columns they're standing there, about to march, each and every one of them. Let's just talk about what Putin had to say. Use the moment to talk about unity, very poignant right now, and to use the moment to thank everybody that helped, the Allied forces that helped win the Great Patriotic War, to thank the US, to thank Britain. He didn't miss that moment, did he?
No, he didn't. He thanked both, like you said, the United States, Britain, France, the Allied powers, making it clear that this should be a joint victory. He also, of course, pointed out the enormous sacrifice that the Soviet Union gave to liberate Europe from the Nazis. But he also pointed out the political situation today, not in detail. He certainly hinted, and he talked about how a new order was created in the world after World War II, the creation of the UN, this attempt to provide stability and safety on the European continent, and that in the last decade or so, that has broken up with attempts to create a unipolar world, to create a center of power through force, and that the only way to once again achieve this global status is for equal partnership in the security sphere.
It's interesting, though, again, as say, I'm from Britain, and the way that the war is portrayed by different countries and the way they portray their role in it, you didn't hear, when you're brought up in school in Britain, so much about the huge Russian losses. You heard about Normandy, you heard about the move towards the Alps, but you didn't hear so much. It was all basically concentrated on Normandy, the invasion, the White Cliffs of Dover.
Every country is going to teach history through its nation's eyes. But what's interesting is that recently the British, a British survey, a British company held a survey in which Europeans, only 13% of those asked, believe that the Red Army played a major role in liberating Europe. So those are very harrowing figures.
And the way it's marked here, I was just saying before we went into Putin's speech there, the way it's marked, everyone gets involved from every age, because every family was touched by it.
And this year is especially grand.
But in Europe, every family was touched by it. Why the patriotism here?
Because the sacrifice was so great. From 26 million people. Can you fathom that number? 26 million Soviet people. Just recently, the country has started to recover from a demographic crisis. Just recently. Can you imagine that number, Kevin, if you think about it? Even if you see the number, it's hard to fathom.
Yeah.
26 million, and that's the official estimation. It's probably much higher.
Yeah.
And the war was here. I mean, people saw this war. It was in Europe, of course, as well, but it was an enormous stretch of territory throughout Russia. An enormous stretch of territory. It touched every single family.
St. Petersburg suffers as well.
Many cities suffered across the country, across the Union.
Interesting, this year Putin's written an article saying how his family has been involved, how he lost his father, how he lost his brother.
There's a story in every family, not just Putin's family. I mean, it's as I say, and I'm not going to stop saying, it's very difficult to put into words the losses that the Soviet Union suffered, even with the stories you hear.
Interesting, we just heard in our ear then while you were talking, apparently that's the first time a full minute silence has been observed for the fallen, the dead.
I believe we're going to see a lot of new, perhaps, traditions as we come and celebrate this 70th year.
Yeah, Sergei, is that right? I was hearing in my ear then as Anissa was talking, in fact, what we witnessed then was the first time there's been a full minute's silence for the fallen, for the dead.
Well, I think
you've experienced a lot of these marches, yeah?
There was a metronome, you could hear it too.
Yeah.
Was counting in seconds. Can I say a few words about what's happening in the...
Yes, please do. Tell us what we're doing now. I'm going to go to our correspondent down on Red Square. But who are we seeing here now? Now, this is starting with this march. We must say this parade, just to explain to our viewers, it's split into various categories. This is starting with the historic side of it. First of all, you can see the historic military.
Yes, that's what we are seeing now.
So who are these people? Obviously, army. What vintage? 45.
Look, they divided this parade, as you know, into three parts. The first one is historical, which we're observing now, and in the historical part you see the infantry, and they are clad in the uniforms and the tunics of that day, of the days of the war.
This would have been the kind of uniform that the guys wore back in 1945?
Absolutely. Okay. That's kind of complete replicas of the uniforms. It applies to the Cossacks.
The Cossacks, of course. They're a force to be reckoned with, and they look terribly smart too, don't they?
Absolutely, Cuban Cossacks, and they also had a part to play.
And of course, each and every regiment represented here from all the ranks and all the services, yeah? It's not just Army, Navy, Air Force, others you were mentioning earlier on.
Yeah, certainly so. It's because in the Army you also have quite a lot of division. The land forces, you have artillery, you have engineers, you have tanks, armor, whatever, so it's all divided. And all the other branches, if you take the Air Force also is divided into cannon, into the materiel itself, and into the support battalions and whatever. So it's not only the pilots that have to march, but also all the people who make it possible for them to fly and to engage the enemy.
Well, up here in our studio, we've got some great commentary. Now, we've got some great views of it. Right down in the thick of it, our camera's down there with Neil Harvey. He's in Red Square. Lucky man, he got an official invite. He's right down there with me. Neil, I hope you can hear us.
Yeah, loud and clear, Kevin.
Wow, what do you make of it so far? What a show.
It's stunning, isn't it? And I feel quite privileged to be quite so close to the action. It's fascinating to see all these historical uniforms coming through. You really get a feel of the history, and it's only going to get more intense. I should just mention, of course, we should look forward to some of the foreign representations here, not just Russian troops. There's going to be Serbia, China, India. Elite regiments are going to be on display, but I'm really looking forward to what's still to come. Like most people, the heavy artillery's coming, the big guns, the tanks, the T-34s, the brand new Armata T-14s, the Su-100s, the tank destroyers that fought in the Great Patriotic War, and of course the big climax, the air display, including helicopters, bombers, fighter jets, and an aerial display, and my favourite, one of the world's largest transport planes, named after one of the veterans who's in the crowd watching today on Red Square.
Wow. And when those planes go past, apparently I hear they're going to bring right past our head here, so whether we're actually going to be able to hear us speak by then, well, we'll soon find out. Well, over 1,000 foreign troops are also taking part in the parade right now. We've got military experts who are saying Sergei Savchenko for more on that. It's a tradition to involve troops from abroad, isn't it? Not just Russia.
We did have that tradition some time ago, but
well, they're back now in force.
Yeah, but the troops, the units from these 10 countries are taking part in it for the first time, if I'm not mistaken, because we are talking about Azerbaijan and Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, India, Mongolia, Serbia, and China.
I think we've lost the sound to the programme. Oh, there it comes back again. We'll keep the music going. There's something else. There's something else I wanted to talk to you about as well. There's a new element, if you like, marching as well. As you were touching on there, slightly, called the Immortal Regiment. The Immortal Regiment's a movement that's been established in Russia. Anissa, you're fully aware of this as well, I know, to honour the great patriotic war veterans. On Victory Day, we see tens of thousands of young people carrying columns, forming columns and carrying the portraits of their relatives who participated in the Great Patriotic War. As you're saying, Anissa, earlier on, it's not been forgotten even by the younger generation here. They remember their grandparents.
It's something that probably is unique to Russia, I would say. I was coming here this morning in the metro and I couldn't believe the amount of very young children. I mean, I'm talking like from under 5 to 15. It's been something that's been passed on from generation to generation to never forget.
That initiative, it started in Tomsk. Tomsk is a very big city in Siberia.
Yeah.
I personally had a very great opportunity to visit the city several times, and I was amazed how many streets in Tomsk are named after various heroes of the Second World War. It probably explains why Tomsk actually initiated that movement.
Very much the new generation remembering what happened. This is back in 2012. It was set up by a local TV station there in Tomsk, as you were saying. The recent history then, 2013, the march, this Immortal Regiment, these new young people, held marches in 120 Russian cities and towns. 2014, it went more global. It was held in 500 cities across the planet. This year, it's being they're marking it, as you're touching on just now, in Russia, the US, Germany, in Austria, Ireland, Norway, Azerbaijan, the list goes on, Belarus, Israel, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, Ukraine and Estonia. Interesting, that's taking the memories, taking the movement forward to a new generation in this, because the worry is, could it die out? Doesn't look like it would from what you're seeing today.
It doesn't, but it's always a challenge.
How do you make it relevant? What happened 70 years ago?
It's a very difficult question because it's only natural that each generation will see it a different way. If you didn't witness the war, you're going to feel it differently. I mean, my father-in-law, who is Russian, to this day, he saves everything. He's grateful for every piece of food he puts in his mouth, every sip of water, every day he's alive because he lived through that time. And so the next generation is going to feel it a little bit lighter. And the goal is to not let the new generations go numb.
But interestingly, how do you do that? Is it by putting on a bigger and better show? How do you make it more relevant?
Education, celebration. There is almost no other way, and that's why it's such a challenge, especially when there are attempts for geopolitical reasons to tell different stories, to put emphasis on different sides of history, which is what we're seeing as we come to this 70th anniversary, which even makes it more significant.
In addition, what I can tell you that in schools, they also encourage such initiatives, like during their class hour, they would very often ask pupils to bring to their classrooms whatever relics they have from their granddads, whatever. My son too, they brought something to show which belonged to my dad, who fought in the war from beginning to end.
Do you know, we were talking just now about the numbers who died, and you're saying 27 million, some say 30 million. It's unimaginable.
That's just the official numbers. It's very important to
We've done some calculations, and this is very hard to believe. We're looking at what we're looking at now live in Red Square. Today's victory parade is going to last more than an hour. Back in 1945, it went on for 30 minutes, so it's a much bigger event than then.
And it wasn't on the 9th of May, of course, back in 1945, because the city was destroyed, of course. It was later. It happened in June, I believe.
But so we've done some crunching. During the 4 years of war, 9 million Red Army soldiers and officers died. Now, this is some really poignant figures. You're saying how hard it is to take in the figures. Well, this might help a little bit. Just imagine if they'd all marched through Red Square, that iconic square we're seeing at the moment, in the same formation as today. That's 200 in each parade box. At the same pace, that's 2 steps a second, very regimented. It would take 19 days and nights for those who perished to march through Red Square.
Incredible. And that's 9 million is the Soviet military figure.
That's just the military.
I just want to put this into perspective in a global, for our audience, and I'm not comparing because it was a joint victory, but it's just to put this into perspective. Listen to this. The UK and the US lost a total of some 900,000.
Still hugely painful, hugely painful.
But compare those, just understand, because you keep asking me, why is it so important here in Russia? Why do the people feel it so much?
Because when you come from the West, you don't see it in quite the same way as when you're here.
You don't see the numbers. You don't see the numbers.
You don't. And you know what? Crucially, you're not taught it.
You're not.
I was going on to say, it's very hard to even sum this up. And the total loss of life, we were saying that was just the military.
That was just the military.
The total loss of life for the Soviet Union was up to 25 million. I would say other sources higher than that.
Unofficial.
Women, children, the elderly. Now, they march as well, but they don't march in military formations. But there'll be some here today marching. So if all the people killed had walked in one line through Red Square, on an average pace, that would have taken 1,140 days. Otherwise, if you work it out, 3.5 years of souls who died who could have been marching through.
Than the length of the entire war.
Yeah. That, again, it's almost too mind-boggling to take in, but that's the best way we could try and work out, describe how long it would take these people to march through what you're seeing at the moment, this iconic scene that is repeated year in, year out. What do you make of the parade so far, Sergei? What do you make of the parade so far?
So far, I'm really impressed because it's very interesting to watch troops changing one another, and the cadence is great, and everything is great, you know. And the faces of the of the boys are quite happy, if you can see that, if I may mention that.
And of course, they're all wearing the St. George ribbon. I was talking about that earlier on. There's a big history to the St. George ribbon. Again, hugely poignant and absolutely forefront symbol of what's going on. It's the main symbol of it. We're all wearing them now. The history, of course, it is called the St. George ribbon, one of the most recognised and respected symbols of military valor here in Russia. Widely associated, wasn't it, Nissa, with the commemoration of World War II, because it was used on a medal awarded to all personnel back then, be they civilian or military, anyone who aided the war effort. The earlier history to it, I mean, maybe you can chip in here, Sergei. I believe this ribbon was introduced in the 18th century. It was then the highest military honour in Imperial Russia, yeah?
This is true. This is true, and it was a great honor for a soldier and an officer to have this decoration. It was actually a cross, and the cross had various degrees for the valor that you displayed on the battlefield.
When did a fashion for a little while came back big time about 10 years ago, didn't it? It's had various incarnations.
I think so. It's about 10 years ago, but I would also want to point to the fact that if you look at the medal, which was issued to all the participants of the Great Patriotic War, the Medal of Victory, it also had the same ribbon on it. The same ribbon, the same St. George ribbon.
Of course, as it's been used now, politics never far away. And there's also been some controversy about this ribbon as well. It became a symbol of Russian nationalism in some post-Soviet states after Crimea's reunification with Russia, very recently. The ribbon also used by anti-Maidan protesters in Ukraine, of course, as well.
After the recent changes we saw in Maidan, we've seen somewhat of a movement into sort of getting rid of this ribbon, I would say, to put it lightly. We have documentation of them being burned in the streets, officials basically saying that we don't want the ribbon, we want the poppy. And this goes into a larger story, which I'm sure we'll get to throughout the day, of this attempt to tell history a little bit in a different way than it happened.
But let's focus on the people who are being remembered here, the real stars of the day. So respected here in Russia, the veterans who are still around. They're the main heroes of the celebrations, the main thoughts of people here today. It's amazing, you see young children running up to veterans with flowers. That always, it brings a tear to your eye when you see it. And it happens all the time here. Unfortunately, as I was saying, fewer and fewer to congratulate every year. Well, that's just life. That's how it happens. Still, though, nonetheless, just under 200,000 veterans of that war left in Russia now. How do the veterans view it these days?
Well, the veterans are certainly of age, as you also can appreciate, and of course, most of them have been taken good care of by the government, and the government is doing everything possible in order to accommodate them and to give them all the benefits that they really have deserved and they do deserve. And this program has been on for many years, so that's the veterans, the way they're taken care of. I would also like to say that, you know, even coming here, I noticed that great crowds of people were coming to World Square. And let me also say that it was a voluntary desire of the people to come and to see all that. It's not that somebody summoned them to come or kind of pressed on them to come.
We also aren't seeing this, but along one of the main streets, the main street in Moscow, Tverskaya Street, of course, there are average citizens, and like you said, I don't want to, you know, give you the wrong numbers, but when I was trying to get here, I almost thought I wasn't going to make it. I mean, there are people lined along this street, again, the most well-known street probably in Moscow, watching this parade come down through the city streets. So it's not just on Red Square. Red Square is where we see all the grandeur, but these people have seen this coming up kilometers from this street down through the city, and that's something you don't really see on
Is there rivalry among the various regiments, the various ranks, to put on the best show, to be the smartest, to look the smartest? I think that goes on behind the scenes, you think, or not?
Frankly, I cannot say that. I'm not sure about that. I only can say that the quality of their performance is superb, and they have really put a lot of effort into that.
Yeah, how much training does go into this? We talked about the person organising it. They mustn't have slept for weeks, but you know, the actual military themselves, the various regiments. When do they start training for this?
Well, it's all the time. It begins with the boot camp, you know, but it starts there. But what you need to understand, the purpose of such formations. On the one hand, it's a parade when you display your preparedness, your might, your readiness, whatever. On the other, the initial intent of such formations was to make sure that they would march and deploy properly and adequately for a combat. If you think about what was happening in the 17th, 18th centuries and so on, they were walking formation, they were deploying and all the stuff. And for them to deploy and for them to act as one man, you needed a lot of training. And this training came from marching drills.
We're talking about the veterans just then. Just as you were talking, Sergei was one very proud veteran there, taking off his hat and saluting there, as maybe it was one of his old regiments, the new version of his old regiment passing him by. It must make them feel extremely proud.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I'm not a military expert, that's why you're here. Who are we looking at the moment then? Looking, again, very smart, blue berets.
These are Marines, Russian Marines. These are Russian Marines, and at this particular point in time, and here we have the airborne troops.
Now again, we were saying this is divided into various bits of history. It started off with uniforms in 1945. We've moved forwards now.
Now certainly we talk about modern troops.
Yeah.
We're talking modern troops, and the history part is over.
Yeah. Just wanted to check, because I'm saying they do look very modern and well equipped. So, again, these are all marching in a uniform columns of 200 people. That's standard, yeah? Yes. To a certain beat, to a certain march.
That's how they're trained, and they train individually, and they're trained in formations at their locations, at their garrisons. It's number one, and then they also have simulation parade grounds where they also march so that their performance on Red Square is impeccable.
Nissa, just to remind you, you're watching our live coverage, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls out there, our live coverage of the huge, big celebration today, the 70th anniversary of the victory over Nazism. This is such a big parade. 65 years was a big parade. Were you covering it with me, Nissa?
I was on Red Square.
You were on Red Square. I was up in the bird's nest, wasn't I? That's right. You got the bird's eye view. I never quite.
You'll have to go one year. Really, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it must be amazing to be down there. But anyway, nice to be here talking as well and talking through it. We were talking about the way other nations look at it, and of course. Recently, there's been some controversy in Ukraine. We were talking about that. We're talking about the St. George ribbon, the future for it, maybe in other countries. Ukraine saying no, it wants to adopt what is used in Western Europe more with these things, the poppy.
Has adopted. So you'll see Ukrainian leaders and officials coming to pay their commemorations with a Western European symbol, I think we can call it, not the ribbon which for decades they had used in commemorations as a joint celebration of victory in the Great Patriotic War. And unfortunately, it's not just speculation to say that it's coming from the government, because recently we've heard very public statements from the Prime Minister saying that we will not wear the ribbon, those are for Russians. From the President basically acknowledging that Ukrainian national brigades were national heroes, and these were brigades that fought alongside with the Nazis. From the Polish Foreign Minister making a statement on radio that Auschwitz was liberated by the Ukrainians. I mean, statements that are just ridiculous to anyone who can look back at history. And so they're really, in a sense, making a mockery of this fight, of this victory.
Interesting yesterday when you saw the dignitaries that attended in Ukraine. It was pretty muted attendance. Lithuania, Latvia, one other, maybe Estonia. There, mainly the Eastern European countries came along to lay a wreath, but not a number of Western dignitaries also stayed away too, didn't they?
Perhaps there is a sort of team that's been created between former Soviet states, the Baltics and Ukraine, in light of what's happening in geopolitics and Western leaders, as much as they are on the global stage getting involved, perhaps decided that during this very, very sensitive and important day to sort of step back both from Russia and Ukraine. And maybe that's a good thing.
As we're watching the parade, just to explain to our viewers, if any clarification was needed, the difference and why you called it, you've just been doing it, calling the Great Patriotic War. Of course, in the West, you don't hear about the Great Patriotic War, you hear about World War II. To explain why that is, Russians call World War II the Great Patriotic War because they joined later. Basically, the Second World War was a global war, of course, involving the vast majority of the world's nations. The fight between one side, the Allies, and the other, the Axis, starting back in 1939. The Great Patriotic War, though, the history here, started with Hitler's unannounced attack on the Soviet Union in 1941, and that's when it all began for the Soviet side.
Right, and it ended with the defeat of Nazism. Let's not forget that World War II went on to continue as a whole. So the Great Patriotic War is a piece of the Second World War. Many historians, in fact, one very prominent historian that I spoke to this week said that you can't separate the two, essentially.
Yes, there is also some linguistic overtone, I would venture to say that. That is, when you say Отечественное in Russian, Отечество means fatherland. So actually, patriotic in the English translation, in its English version, it means, what it means in Russian. It means a war for the fatherland. A war for the fatherland. But it acquired the name Great Patriotic War, but it actually is a great war for the fatherland. That's what makes it so significant.
Well, the troops continue to march, the regiments continue to march very proudly, but of course very shortly, and I'm starting to hear some buzzing going overhead now, we're going to see the hardware.
Yes.
For a lot of military enthusiasts, even non-military enthusiasts, this is the bit that makes you go, wow.
It's coming.
I can hear somewhere
Something
helicopters. There's something in the air. I can't see anything yet. But before we talk about what's in the air, let's just remind ourselves.
You can see
what
the
have we got in
tanks.
this?
You see those tanks
The
going
tanks.
across Manege Square? They're going into Red Square. You see them
Just to
rolling
tell
there?
our viewers where we are, we're high up above Manege Square, sort of over the, well, about a quarter of a kilometre away, I suppose, something like that. So we can kind of see just about, if you squint, what's going into Red Square. We'll be crossing to our correspondents who are down there in a minute. But I wanted to talk about this tank, Sergei. Nissa keeps pulling me away from the boys' talk. Tank, the Armata tank, the robotic tank. Now, I mean, okay, it's a war machine. You know, many people would say you shouldn't glorify a war machine, it should kill people. But as a technological bit of kit, this is some bit of kit, isn't it?
Let me tell you what, it's a kind of a platform. It's a mount. And this mount has, it's very versatile, if you see what I mean. This versatility stems from the fact that depending on where you install the power plant and the transmission in the tank, it can be either an APC, armored personnel carrier, or it could be a tank, but it's very much the same platform. And it has quite a lot of modifications. It could be a main battle tank.
By the way, keep your eye on the screen.
This is T-34. It's the original tanks that were the most glorified tanks in the.
I see. So now we're going backwards in history with the equipment. It's the equipment time, the hardware time.
Absolutely.
So what we're seeing here, these tanks would have been used in the Great Patriotic War.
Absolutely. These are T-34.
And this, sir, I can see your face. What are you looking at? A tank? One tank, another tank?
You said that these tanks were used in the Great Patriotic War, and it touched me.
Maybe
Don't
one of these
make me
tanks.
cry on air.
Oh, Nissa. Well, anyway, let's go back to the tanks we're seeing here. Neil is amongst all this. Let's go down to him, shall we? Let's try and get right close to where they are. We go. Hi again. Hi, Neil. The ground should be shaking where you are now, because I think any minute you're about to be approached by some pretty heavy-duty Great Patriotic War rolling stock. Indeed, there they are over your shoulder. What's that like down there, then?
Yeah, that's probably the last word of yours I'll hear, Kevin, because it's just got louder and louder. Red Square is rumbling, and I feel like we've just been taken back 70 years into the past. There they are, the T-34 tanks that really did save the Soviet Union's bacon in many ways. just to inform you, they weren't the biggest tanks in the world at the time. They weren't the most powerful, but they are widely regarded as the most influential tank that took part in the Great Patriotic War because they were such strong all-rounders. They had this never-before-seen combination of good armour, mobility, pretty decent firepower, and most important of all, probably in those difficult conditions, they were highly reliable. The Soviet Union mass-produced them. Thousands of them were sent out wave after wave, and they played a key role in securing victory.
Neil, thank you for now. We're coming back to you a little bit later. Sergei, I want you to keep your eye on the screen as well, because we've talked so much about these Armata tanks, so even for Anissa's benefit, just to show what one looks like. Well, and me as well. I shouldn't be coy. Now, military hardware, of course, is not just about Armata tanks or tanks that serve their duty in the Great Patriotic War. There's a lot more to come as well. Like what, Sergei?
Well, if you come back to Armata tank, I want to mention that the novelty of this tank is, first of all, that the crew is separated from the armaments.
Their heads not up and above.
Absolutely,
yeah,
and the
yeah.
turret is unmanned. Previously it was manned, and because it is unmanned, it is safer. Second, you can accommodate more ammo inside the turret, and thirdly...
I'm sorry to butt in, I want to come back to that. What are we seeing here now?
That's an APC, that's Armored Personnel Carrier.
What, modern day or from the
modern.
70s,
it's
60s?
Modern. It's APC 82.
Military equipment, by its very nature, because it's basically painted green, it's pretty hard to tell what's, I don't know, unless I'm being stupid in this, it's sometimes hard to tell.
I agree
put your hands
completely.
up. Sometimes hard to tell what's newer or what's older. So I'll come back to you as my total reference point here. Back to the Armata tank, one last thought about it. The idea is it could become fully robotic, fully automatic in the future, yeah? How's that work? Who's going to drive it?
They say about that, but actually it has a lot of equipment. They say it is literally infested with all sorts of electronics. It has so much electronics in it that it's unimaginable. And what is most important is that all of it is made and developed in Russia. It's all domestic.
Now, I'm seeing some missiles there.
Plus to mention, it has a new kind of armor. The alloy they use for it is lighter, and it is more robust and sturdier than the previous armor. It makes it lighter, so it really contributes to its performance as well.
What are we seeing? I just talked about some missiles just now. I was looking at another feed. We're about to see it, I think. But right, we're looking at again now armored personnel. These are tanks.
This is also a modification of Armata, but this is the personnel carrier. Armata personnel carrier is not a tank.
How much do these things cost?
Well, I have no idea. I would not want to delude you by giving you a number which I'm not sure of. So it's.
But Anissa, you've not done your study on this one.
No idea. I'm not even
I can tell you one thing. You know that Armata was developed on the basis of the prototype, which was known as T-95, and they stopped development of that machine for the reason that it was too expensive, and secondly, they said that it would not or could not be capable of meeting all the challenges of modern warfare. That's why they stopped it in 2010.
And of course, the focus with modern technology, the focus on lightness, agility, and this tank, if a tank could be described as light, is much lighter than its predecessors. It's faster too. It can get along about 90 kilometers an hour, apparently.
About that, and versatility is a great thing too.
Yeah. Right, let's stop talking about the Armata. Apparently I'm being told we've got 10 minutes until the big fly past.
Yes.
The planes. That's always spectacular. Problem is,
Can I just say something about the camera work this year? Because we're talking about how grand the 70th parade is. I just want to talk about some things which I believe are new, because I've watched quite a few of these parades. So they have this shot,
These are T-90s.
which looks somewhat like a GoPro on the front of the tanks. And they also have shots from under the tanks, which is pretty cool. It looks like it's being filmed from some kind of glass. And so you see the tanks rolled over the camera.
Yeah, we haven't actually shown that yet.
We've seen it. No, we've seen it a couple of times. We're not showing it at the moment. But our audience, look out for these very, very modern.
Look at the Armata. This is the Armata.
That's the Armata.
That's the Armata now.
Well, it's a fine-looking tank in this, isn't it? But I say I couldn't tell.
It's very green.
How many of these in the ranks? Then? How many of these in the rank? You say they look awesome. You can tell. You can see the huge difference.
Yeah.
But in terms of technology, in terms of fighter power,
they put all sorts of armaments on top of it. In addition to the 125 millimeter smoothbore gun, they also could install even heavier equipment and make it sort of a self-propelled
what's it got
platform
that the rivals haven't got, then, to put it bluntly? Yes, it's a great bit of kit, but has it got any more than other rivals made, say, America or France, etc.?
It has the capability of assessing the situation in the radius of 100 kilometers. It can engage simultaneously.
It could find a target it could find a target and fire a target within 100 kilometers.
Yes, it has all the capabilities for that. It has absolutely fantastic protection, dynamic, and other. Say.
Okay. While you're talking about that, I'm sorry to keep interrupting you. I just want to keep our viewers abreast of what's going through Red Square as well on our monitor screens, on our transmission screens. Mm-hmm. Again, what are we seeing there?
These are self-propelled guns.
Again, not as powerful as the tank we saw.
No, that's the purpose is different.
Why are they different?
Because they have the caliber of their weapons is bigger, and they are not intended for maneuvering in the battlefield. They are intended for delivering, for bringing the weapon to a certain position and to engage in the adversary from that position.
Just a reminder as well, of course, to our viewers, you can watch all of this, and just, of course, what's happening here is also being echoed across the rest of Russia. And this is the focal point in this, isn't it? But there are other similar parades, thousands of people marching, more hardware on the streets in at least 12 other cities across Russia. But we're across that on our YouTube page as well in HD. We've got on our YouTube channel, we're covering all that for 4 hours.
And on our website, we have full coverage of celebrations across the country at RT.com.
So you can keep across it in all our platforms today. I've forgotten the hashtags. Hashtag 70. I'm going to look. Hashtag Victory 70. Hashtag Victory 70. I'm supposed to keep an eye on it for the next few hours. Nissa's smiling wryly at me. Now, sir, what's coming here? It looks like a thing that I'm being slightly. It looks like a thing that tows planes out in an airport. So that's how up to speed I am on
this. This Tor M2. This is air defense systems.
Oh, it's a radar. Yeah, you can see it. It's got a technical bit of kit.
Absolutely.
Now, shortly, I guess at some point you're going to see. Is that going to happen this year? You know, those massive warheads. Bombs, whatever you want to call them, coming across. Are they in the parade this year?
Only one single unit is supposed to have. I'm not sure that they have the warheads inside the missiles they're going to carry, but the missiles that they carry are capable of having MIRVs inside, multiple independent targeted rocket vehicles. So it's.
I was talking about the planning that goes into this.
You have the books.
These are the Buk missile launchers, yeah?
Yes. The Buk M missile launchers.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about the planning that goes into this for days, weeks before the military are here. So much care and attention goes into it. Lining up, they do the parades at night, obviously, to cause the rehearsals at night, to cause as least disruption as possible to the Muscovites, public going about their duties. But if you're on the streets late at night here, a lot of this has already been trundling through, isn't it?
Yeah, and on 2 days before, I believe the 7th, I was caught in traffic on the other side of Red Square. They had a full last dress rehearsal during the day, and lots of people, actually, lots of crowds who wanted to perhaps leave Moscow on this Victory Day came out to watch that as well. So that was the big final show 2 days before.
So we've seen the walking contingent, if you like. We're in the middle of seeing the hardware. After this, we're going to see maybe the missiles, more weapons.
Missiles are coming now.
And then it's going to be the
flyover.
air power, the flyover.
Yep.
That's everyone's favorite part.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
I think they'll be flying right
I'm into
over us.
boys' toys. Tanks, they're
Come
great.
on, you're in
but
the
they kind
center of a
look
major European city and fighter jets are flying, you know,
Yeah.
so close
This is
to you.
S400
See the windows shake.
Right, these are the kind of things when I've been watching
These are S400.
previously, these are missiles.
It's the most efficient systems that really can.
And what, does it launch from that? Does it launch from a hole in the ground, that big missile, or is it launched from those tubes?
It is mobile and it is launched from whatever it stops. You know, it's
So the round things we're seeing there are the launchers and the missile will be inside.
the containers inside. The missiles inside.
What's the range of that then?
I think I'm not sure about the range, but I understand there is no target that it can engage.
See Vladimir Putin
Air
there
and
sitting
space
next to
target.
his Chinese counterpart. Of course, one of the main global figures at this parade. Western headlines are not going to like that shot. China and Russia during this grand military parade. For them, of course, it's about much more. For the West, it will be about Russia trying to show off its military might. But quite a symbolic moment. They're whispering to each other throughout the entire
And
parade.
the
You can
YAR
see shots of
system.
them.
Is there any development that goes on between China and Russia regarding military hardware, regarding military technology, any sales, exports?
It has been traditionally so, as I understand, and we have had cooperation and collaboration in the development of military hardware for a long time, and I think this process continues, and it apparently will be intensified.
I hope you've got your airplane tickets because we're in the departure lounge. Apparently, we've been told we've got about
less than
1
minute.
Less than one. I can see on the monitor now.
Here they come.
Planes are arriving.
They're arriving.
And they're arriving on force. Let's see. Oh, wow, look, we've got a picture
Look
of
at
the
that shot.
cockpit there.
Incredible.
Right, take us through the planes, Sergey.
Yeah.
This is my stuff. I like planes.
That's good.
Looks a bit like Concorde in its day. What is it?
That's 2160 AM. First we have the helicopters.
Let's go to Neil. Neil's got a better view. Neil Harvey down there, Red Square. These are right above your head. Take us through, if you can hear us, what that is like. I can barely hear myself think.
I can barely hear a word, but I hope, Kevin, that you were just talking to me then. Let me just explain what's happening. It's absolutely deafening here. All of those tanks and missile systems coming through, Kevin, have been absolutely deafening. I can't hear a thing from the studio. It's also just getting that little bit louder because of this. You've just gone through now. We had the first of the aerial display. It was a Tupolev Tu-160, one of the White Swans, a supersonic bomber. Wow, that is big and that is loud. And now we've got the attack helicopters coming through. These are Kamovs, one of the new additions to the Russian Air Force. More wave and wave of attack helicopters coming through. We're going to see all the latest weaponry that we have in Russia aerially. We're going to have the bombers, we're going to have the aerial display team coming in as well, which is going to be worth waiting for. I'm sorry, it's all a bit crazy at the moment. We'll come back to you in a few minutes.
No, you're doing a good job, Neil. Good job there. I hope we're back on. Yeah, Neil, thank you for that. Very noisy. Well, we did predict it. Sure enough, it was. Do you like that, Anissa?
Yes, great. We have a great view, I have to say.
Yeah. Take us through. Neil was listing some of the air power that we saw there. Just do an up sum for us again. What was your favourite, Sergey?
That's Antonov 124, Vladimir by the name. It's the biggest tanker plane.
Fuel tanker.
You can see there.
Refuel.
Yeah,
so
fuel
that
tanker.
used to refuel in the skies, yeah?
That's the biggest, absolutely.
And would a plane like that ever be used to carry cargo at all? Or?
And you have Ilyushin 76 aircraft, which are also coming to the square.
What's the equivalent in Britain of the Hercules, for instance, the big carrier?
That would be close to it, close to Hercules.
Okay.
Strategic bombers.
Wow.
295 AM.
You wouldn't hear that.
295. They're strategic bombers.
Not jets, propeller powered. those planes, that
No,
drone.
not yet.
Those planes you just spoke about then, they're not jet planes, they're propelled by propellers, yeah?
These are important. These are these variable geometry bombers. You can see them on the screen now. These are most modern aircraft, bomber aircraft that we have in our military inventory, Air Force inventory.
Easy planes to fly?
Now they simulate refueling in the air. The simulation of refueling. And it's Tu-160 strategic bombers. They're flying over. You can see them on the screen as well.
They're so close to each other. They're so close to each other.
Absolutely.
One slip, but of course that's where all the training comes in, isn't it? More to come. They're doing it again.
That's what they're demonstrating. And they demonstrate refueling of different types of aircraft in the air. Here you have Tu-160 as being refueled.
Okay, let's go back down to the ground. We just saw spectacular refueling then that managed to get the nozzle right on the nose. And that was all happening above your head and not a drop of fuel spilt on you, thankfully, Neil Harvey. What are you seeing down there?
It is tremendous, Kevin. Still deafening here, but wow, all heads on Red Square turn to the sky, craning necks, trying to battle through the noise. But what a display. Like you said, refueling, not the easiest thing to do mid-air. Russia showing off all its expertise as well as its latest equipment. A couple of the highlights for me, the AN-124-100, I mentioned it earlier, one of the world's biggest transport planes, named after one of the veterans in the stands today, Vladimir Gladilin, and I'm really looking forward to, as I'm sure everybody else here is, to the display. The Russian Knights and Swifts, they're going to be performing synchronized. The aim is to put themselves in the shape of a 70. That's going to take some doing in honor of the veterans here and their efforts of 70 years ago. Really looking forward to that.
Yeah, let's keep on these pictures now. Thank you for that, Neil. We'll be popping back to you later. Neil down there in Red Square. Right, let's go back to the live pictures. I can barely hear myself think, so at the moment, it was as noisy as we said it would be in this. Hope our viewers can hear us. Let's keep on these pictures for a minute. What are we seeing now then, flying that V formation? Neil just spoke about it, but give us a bit more detail.
It's fighters Su-35 are flying over.
Is that the end? Is there more to come? There's more to come. Look, some more blue-coloured jets. What have we got here?
It's Su-34 flying over. It's 8 of them in 2 formations.
So the big trick that everyone's waiting for, like Neil said, is the formation of the number 70 by the planes. I assume that's going to be somewhat of a finale. Su-24
attack planes, 2 formations are flying over now.
Okay, let's
MiG-31 interceptors.
We've got these jets coming over as the roar of the jets and the various planes coming across. We'll let you to continue to talk about what we're seeing here.
It's MiG-31 interceptors. Now you can see them in the sky. It's the most efficient aircraft that Russian Air Force has today.
i.e. it's fast, it can move quickly, it's agile, yeah?
Yes.
Not designed to shoot down, more to...
A group of Su-34s, Su-27s and MiG-29 fighters flying in an air wing formation.
So some ugly bombers and fighter bombers and attack planes. This is the diamond. They call it the diamond, Kubinka diamond. That's a very, very interesting design.
Look at the shots from inside the cockpit there. Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
That's the technology
How
you were
things
talking
have
about.
changed.
Yeah.
GoPros.
Look at
And
the
here's
70.
number
That's a
70.
Here it
Number
comes.
70.
This is the big trick. 70 years.
And off goes the 70. But another formation just coming in, just
This
behind it.
formation, so it's our congratulations from the Air Force.
Are we getting towards the end now? I guess we are.
It's
Oh,
coming
look
to
at
the end.
this. The tricolor, look, the Russian colours coming in.
That's the concluding flight over. 6 Su-25.
Again, some
And
precision
they have the
flying
colors
there.
of the Russian flag.
Yeah. Again, the guys flying that, I guess a bit like the Red Arrows if you were in Britain. I can compare it to Britain because that's all I know really of that. They would be trained, highly trained to do this. They're the top of their field. I mean, similar of course, air forces in Italy do the same thing, and also in France.
They're the best of the best, the cream of the cream. There's no doubt about that.
Years of training.
It's a great
Talking
honor
about the
to
years of
take-
training.
to take part in this parade.
And that team that you saw, they call them Strishy in Russian, or
Do you know,
Swifts.
as the roar of the planes disappears into the distance, now the rousing music comes in as the military bands are making their way into
The military
Red
band
Square.
is the last to march and to conclude the parade. That's a tradition, and they are also singing.
What are they singing? Can you try? What is that song?
That's a patriotic song which repeats the words of one of the political officers near Moscow, that Moscow is behind us and there's nowhere to retreat.
What exactly are they singing there? Can you translate it? Is it...
The song is about the defense, the last line of defense of Moscow, and the words are that Moscow is behind us, so we can't retreat anymore.
Let's just take a little bit of a breather ourselves now. We've been talking for over an hour or so. Let's just listen to this, bring up the music, and enjoy it.
Под музыку песни «День Победы» сводный оркестр...
The combined military band now leaves Red Square to the tune of Victory Day.
Парад Победы завершен. Да
The Victory Day
здравствует
parade is over.
70-я годовщина Великой Победы. Слава ветеранам Великой
Glory to the veterans of the Great Patriotic War.
Well, I hope you're enjoying what you're seeing so far, our ongoing live coverage here on RT International of the 70th celebration of the Great Patriotic War and the defeat over Nazism. What you're seeing now, of course, President Putin talking to the various, would these be the generals, the top brass from the various ranks?
The commanders who led the formations.
That Cossack uniform standing out there so much as well.
He is actually extending the words of appreciation, recognition, thanks to all the participants of the parade. Here you have the officers or generals who commanded the formations that were marching past the square.
All right, let's go back into the thick of it now, down there on Red Square as well. Neil Harvey. Hi there, Neil. Well, where you were, you've seen this all happening and unfolding for the last, hour and 20 minutes, literally 6 or 7 feet in front of your face. When you see a big tank coming at you, or a whole almost regiment marching towards you, must be pretty awesome. Take us through it.
Yeah, hi again, Kevin. Do you know what? The best way to describe this has been extremely emotional. I didn't expect it to be, but it has been, because when you're so close to all of these troops, all of this weaponry, you can't help but kind of imagine what it was like for the people who actually fought in this war 70 years ago. And it was very interesting, because just as we started in silence and we've now ended in silence. Very interesting, as the military band were just marching through to bring this to a climax. I was watching the 100 or so veterans in the stands just to my right, and you could see them clapping along with the band. You could tell the emotions were coming back, because many of them have experienced this in the past. Remember, of course, all those troops who were sent off from Red Square to go and fight against the Nazi Germans, and this was the scene. You can just imagine how it was all those years ago, people being sent off to fight, not knowing if they'd ever come back. And probably the emotions have all come flooding back now to the veterans, seeing those T-34 tanks roll across Red Square. Some of them will have been in those tanks, or they'll have fought alongside those tanks, or they might have even had their lives saved by them. It's all finished now. Let's just bring you a few of the highlights, though, from the last hour or so.
Частей. Знаменную группу сопровождает почетный караул 3 видов вооруженных сил: сухопутных войск, военно-воздушных сил и военно-морского флота. В его строю лучшие военнослужащие отдельного комендантского Преображенского полка.
Whilst, of course, there is an element of show about today's proceedings, let's not forget the strong sense of remembrance. President Putin spoke at the beginning of the ceremony, and of course there's a very important message, which is that we mustn't forget those very harsh lessons from decades ago and the atrocities that took place, and that they must never be repeated. So very important to get the right message across on this day. Let's hear what Vladimir Putin had to say.
Now, after 70 years, history again demands that we be aware and watchful. We should not forget that the ideas of racial supremacy and exceptionalism led to the bloodiest war in history.
So it's been a day of remembrance. It's been a show of strength, let's be honest, and but also a day of hope. Hope that things will end as they just did, in quiet and in peace. And Russia hopes that that's how it will remain.
Yeah, Neil, thanks for the update there. Thanks for the update there from Red Square. What a march, what a parade that was. Well, give me your thoughts on it now. Final thoughts as we, as President Putin continues to speak to the generals there, the majors, the heads of the regiments, and say thank you. Your thoughts, Anissa?
I'm almost speechless, to be honest. I thought it was very interesting what Neil brought up, that it began with a minute of silence and it ended with a minute of silence. And it seems like, again, the significance of coming to this 70th anniversary in the current geopolitical situation is one of great importance. And I think Russia really realizes this. The veterans sitting on the stands realize it, President Putin realizes it, and Russians realize it. And perhaps Europeans and those who fought the war with Russia, with the Soviet Union, you know, over some 70 years ago, are starting to see that. I believe that's the hope. I think Neil really touched on it in the end there, saying that the hope is that security and peace will prevail.
Well, let's talk now to Igor Piskunov. He was sort of backstage here of the whole event in Manezhnaya Square, just behind the arch as you go through into Red Square. So you saw everybody queuing up, waiting to go in, everybody making their formations there. Interesting to talk about. We've talked so much about the hardware, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the military we've seen. Interesting speculation about the dignitaries who came or moreover didn't come. Who did? There were a lot of invitations sent out. A lot of important people did come, but who were the notable people that didn't?
Well, Russia sent out invitations to about 60 world leaders and senior officials. Many did come, about 30 of them. Including the Chinese president. In fact, they were sitting watching the parade together with Vladimir Putin. We saw them chatting about something there. Also, the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon came to Moscow, especially for this event. The leaders of India, Palestinian authorities, Egyptian authorities, and many, many others. But it didn't go without controversy, since most Western leaders, including the heads of Britain, France, the United States, they didn't come. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is going to visit Moscow, but tomorrow, so she wasn't at the parade herself. But interestingly, I met with some World War II veterans from the United States, and they did come to Moscow to participate in these festivities, despite being over 90 years old right now.
If it hadn't been for the Soviets coming in from the other side, that would have been a hard war for us to win. It really would have been. So we're very thankful that the Russians started protecting their side and coming into Germany that way. That really helped us a lot. It really did.
Without both the Western states and the Soviet Union attacking Germany, I'm not sure that we could have won the war.
The victory over Nazi Germany was truly a result of joint work between the Soviet Union and the West. And frankly, well, I don't think that this is the type of event that should raise the sort of political difficulties that Russia and the West are currently experiencing right now.
Igor, thanks for those thoughts as we're watching President Putin walking out of Red Square now, along with the various generals, having witnessed the parade firsthand. And it's been Moscow's one biggest celebration for years, basically. And 7 decades ago, let's not forget what it's all about. The capital was buzzing in a different way. The news it had then was news it had been waiting for so long. Let's remember that.
Великая Отечественная война, которую вел советский народ против немецко-фашистских захватчиков, победоносно завершилась.
That roar you heard just then, the fireworks, and that burst of joy and unity there back then. Indeed, it's almost impossible, isn't it, to imagine the hardship that people had endured during those awful, long, bloody years of war, with many believing they'd never even be alive to see the day. Well, we've got hold of a letter written by one Soviet soldier that was dated the 9th of May, 1945. It makes some touching reading.
Hello, my dear parents. With all my heart, I congratulate you on the greatest national holiday, the 9th of May, 1945. The day that millions have been waiting for and dreaming of has come. You can imagine the depth of joy we're feeling here, the joy I feel, because I am alive, alive, alive. I want to scream out loud, I am alive. Do you realize how significant this word is? This is the word that every person has been dreaming of throughout the entire war, that is, for 4 years.
Among them, the Chinese President Xi Jinping, also the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, and the leaders of Cuba, Palestine and Egypt too. In fact, what you're seeing now are live pictures from Red Square, just outside the Kremlin. Together with the Russian president, they're about to lay flowers at the tomb of the unknown soldier near the Kremlin walls, paying tribute indeed to all those who lost their lives fighting to defeat Nazism. So President Putin making his way over there now. It'll be a short walk of a few minutes, Sergei?
Yeah, he is actually coming to the tomb of the unknown soldier. As I can see it on the screen, he's very close to it.
And is this something that happens every year? Remind me.
I wouldn't say so. I thought that previously it was kind of separated, although I do not want to insist it was so. But this time they really show that not only President Putin, but also all the other dignitaries who have come to Moscow. They have come to the tomb of the unknown soldier, and I understand the ceremony of laying wreaths to the tomb will begin right now. Couldn't be the first.
As you were saying earlier on, interesting that we saw the Chinese president sitting next to Vladimir Putin in this.
Yes.
They're right next to each other still as they're about to lay the flowers.
Yeah. Any thoughts about the people that stayed away? I suppose that there'd be one school of thought was, despite the troubles, should you put that behind you and at least, you know, this is such a big event, commemorating something that happened 70 years ago, would it not be time to put some of the differences aside, at least for this event?
Well, that's been much of the criticism, and not just from Russians. Certainly a big part of our coverage and the discussion that's taking place, ironically, about 70 years ago is happening online. And there's a lot of discussion there about how this was perhaps disrespectful, not the right moment to do it. But it didn't change the fact that many, many very important leaders to Russia and to the multipolar world, which Russia is very much a supporter of, have come to show their respect. And I think that's what the country is focusing on today. Not those who didn't come, but those who are here and paying their commemorations.
Indeed. Can you give us a little history, Sergei, of the tomb of the unknown soldier here?
This tomb was erected, or it was built in the 60s, as I remember, and at first there was no honor guard at the tomb. It was just a tomb of the unknown soldier. But eventually what happened when the guard in front of the entrance to the Lenin tomb was kind of abolished, and they moved this ceremony to the tomb of the unknown soldier. Of course, the very route is different now because they come from a different place, and there are certain modifications to the ceremony. But anyway, the honor guard is there, and the guards stand at attention, and that's it. What we would have seen now is that all the wreaths have been laid from all the dignitaries who have come to pay homage to the unknown soldier.
Let's just let this breathe for a minute, give our viewers a full flavour of what's happening here. Just stop talking for a moment and just take 30 seconds of what's happening here with full sound. Again, the Russian national anthem playing there, and President Putin and the various world dignitaries now going off to have a luncheon together, I believe, inside the Kremlin. Again, another poignant moment. Whenever you pass that tomb of the unknown soldier, the unknown warrior, it really, again, puts the hair on the back of your neck up. And the soldiers that stand there guarding it look so proud, and I guess they're extremely proud to be there as well.
And you're going to see thousands and thousands of Russians, Muscovites come to this point today, throughout the day, and lay red carnations to pay their respects to those who lost their lives. This is open to the public. People come all year round just to give some perspective to our audiences. Now you see these world leaders paying their respects, and then the people of Russia will come to pay their respects throughout the day.
We were talking earlier on, talking of the people of Russia paying their respects, and I mentioned the Immortal Regiment, as it's been called. Basically a new wave of what are now distant relatives, 3 generations gone sometimes, from people who died in the Great Patriotic War. But nonetheless, in the last couple of years, this all started, as you were saying, Sergei, in the Siberian city of Tomsk, by a local radio station. Back in 2012, but boy, it's spread. 6,000 people took part in a march there, marching in columns carrying pictures of their distant relatives now who had died in the Great Patriotic War. But it's spread over the years, isn't it?
Yeah, it's gaining momentum, let's put it this way, and more and more people are taking part in it, and it's becoming popular because you can find a family where you would not have some granddads or grandmoms who fought in this war, and whose pictures are there, and they certainly want to remember them, and this initiative, which you call the Unknown Regiment, or the Unforgotten Regiment, let's put it this way. You know, this movement is very important, and it really gives a very important patriotic message to all the people who are taking part in it.
Yeah, and worth mentioning as well that it's not just here in Russia that these groups gathering to remember their loved ones, their distant relatives who died. There've also been similar marches in the United States, in Germany, Austria, Ireland, Norway, Azerbaijan, the list goes on, Belarus, Israel, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, Ukraine, and Estonia, to name a few. Now we're seeing a march past here, past the tomb of the unknown soldier. Who are these people? The honor guard. These are the elite of the elite as well. Yeah?
The elite of the elite, and they represent all the three branches, which is the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy. As you can see, now the Air Force, and here comes the Navy.
Is this sort of symbolic of a victory mark? Because the music is Soviet victory war songs that were played and associated with victory.
True so.
Did you get the feel this year, Sergei, that it was the biggest, the best to mark the 70th year? Did you see a lot different? I mean, it's always full of pomp and splendour. It's always a big deal. The sun always shines down. We didn't get to talk about that. Maybe we'll in a minute. Did you get the feeling that it was the best yet?
Yeah, to me, as I really can compare some other manifestations that I was a witness to before, I can say that this was the most impressive of all. And what adds additional significance to it is that in the past parades, if I can say that, they would normally present the equipment, kind of upgraded equipment, slightly upgraded equipment, but mostly it was the equipment vintage, the 1980s and whatever. Whereas at this particular parade, they showed at least 10 absolutely novel pieces of material, which already is an accomplishment and an achievement for the Russian industry.
And Lisa, your thoughts on it? You, I guess, like me, look at it because you're not a military person, neither am I. But nonetheless, you can't fail to be impressed by first the organisational skills of this, the amount of people that turned up, the professionalism of it, the training that must have gone into it. Where do you stop?
It's always impressive for anyone, even if you don't or aren't aware of any kind of military hardware, to see planes fly over your head so close to the ground. So that's tremendous. But for me, it's always the emotional feeling that touches me. And every year it kind of, I think it's because as the number gets higher of the years since the war passed, the more touching it becomes to me personally. That's my impression. For me, it's more of an emotional feeling when I watch this parade that I get. I don't feel like, oh wow, these tanks are amazing, Russia's such a strong military power. I feel like sorrow and pain. I'm sorry to, kind of rain on the parade in a sense, but it's truly what I feel when I watch these pictures.
It's a very mixed feeling
this day.
For me,
it's a solemn parade. That's how I feel. I mean, I would never miss it. I love to come and
Right to call it a celebration, then, or not?
It's the celebration of life for those who fought the war so that their people could live on. And so, in a sense, yeah, it's a celebration, but it's one that is bittersweet, I think.
Just still looking at the pictures, just describing to our viewers. Everyone's gathering, I believe, Sergei, now for the world leaders and Putin for a photo opportunity. And the sun shines down. Can't wait to talk about this. The sun shines down. Now, is this true or not, that generally on May the 9th, the sun always shines down? Myth or not?
I think it's true, but I don't know. It could be a rumor that they seed the clouds. Is that what you're talking about?
That's what I've heard.
I don't know.
Is it what, Sergei? You could have spilled the beans on this one.
I've been here for 14 years, and every year I'm told that that's the case.
Well, I can tell
How can it be sunny every May the 9th?
I can tell you that they always have a squadron or whatever of aircraft which are filled with. Yeah.
Okay. And that's why it always rains
really
on
can
May 10th.
dissipate the clouds if they are too heavy. That is, they would force the clouds to rain someplace else, but not exactly on Red Square.
Well,
but it doesn't happen every year. And this year, what I heard in the news is that they were on the ready.
Yeah.
They were ready to take off and to dissipate the clouds, but it simply was not necessary.
It's a bit hazy, but yeah.
It's not as hot as usually. As it usually is, I have to say.
Again, people be surprised when you come here to Moscow. A lot of people always think that, when I say I work in Moscow, they say it must be cold, freezing cold all the year. Of course it's not. Well, from now on, really, isn't it? Now, there we are. That's the official portrait of the dignitaries and the world leaders that came here, together, of course, with the Russian president who's hosting them in Moscow. Now, right after that, as I said, the guests are going to be treated to a grand dinner just inside the walls behind them in the Kremlin. And everything in the Kremlin is grand. I know I went there last week to interview the presidential head of administration, Sergei Ivanov. My word, that is grand. Kept very clean. Army of people in there keeping it clean. It's nice to see behind the scenes. Okay, well, there we are. That's coming towards the end of our live coverage here on RT International as we look at the tomb of the unknown soldier and the flame continuing to burn. Those who survived, the veterans, are, of course, as we say, the main heroes of today's celebrations. And unfortunately, every year there are fewer and fewer to congratulate and thank with the passing of time. There are only just around under 200,000 veterans of that war left in Russia now. Well, Mark Ivanikin recalls, he is one of them, he recalls that despite all the hardships at the time that he went through, he personally at least was certain in his head of victory. Well, there he is. That's the man himself. Now, you may have noticed.
У нас не было вот мальчишки, 19 лет нам было, первый курс Московского артиллерийского училища. Не было мысли, что мы Москву сдадим и что проиграем войну. Такой мысли не было.
Yeah, sorry about talking over that. Slightly went out in the wrong order. Let's talk about the victory ribbon you just saw there. You may have noticed that ribbon they were talking about earlier on. It's one of the main symbols of Victory Day here in Russia. Now, the same ribbons were used on victory medals established back in May 1945. They were awarded to military personnel and civilians back then for their efforts in the war. In fact, just under 15 million veterans have become recipients of these victory medals, while the ribbon they're decorated with has got a much longer history. In fact, dates back to the 18th century. Now, when we're looking back at history, some 70 years ago, because this, after all, is the 70th anniversary of it, some of the soldiers about to be awarded with that medal marched through Red Square in the inaugural Victory Parade, celebrating their return home after years of fighting. Now, you've seen some unique footage of that historic event earlier on in the programme. If you've missed it, here it is again. Events to mark the defeat of Nazi Germany took place across Europe, of course, yesterday, the 8th of May. Let's take a look at how Victory in Europe Day then was commemorated across the continent. Well, that's the way events were remembered across Europe over the last 24 hours on the 8th of May. Of course, the 9th of May here is a big day for all the former members of the Soviet Union, but Ukrainian veterans this year may feel slightly intimidated. Recent laws approved by the Ukrainian parliament ban all communist symbols.
Wir können uns alle sehr gut auf den sowjetischen Anmarsch in die Ukraine und nach Deutschland erinnern.
To, że to front ukraiński, pierwszy front ukraiński i Ukraińcy wyzwalali, bo tam żołnierze ukraińscy.
І в моєму виступі на святі державного прапора вояки УПА згадувалися як приклад героїзму у відношенні до України.
Well, let's get more on this and bring in again our senior political correspondent, Anissa Naoué, here in our special studio today for our special coverage. We're saying that must have a very detrimental effect on the thoughts of the patriots there in Ukraine who wanted to mark this day and can't.
Right, there's definitely a movement in the new Ukraine, let's call it, after the events of Maidan and what followed. There's, of course, still a ceasefire in the east, but a war, let's be honest, is going on as we reach 70 years. So 70 years on, war again is on the European continent. So this is something that Ukrainians are certainly feeling as we mark this event here in Russia and across Europe. And then this attempt from their government. Our audience saw clear examples from the Ukrainian Prime Minister just distorting facts, just blatantly saying that Russia, the USSR invaded Germany and Ukraine on television. These are facts that you can...
Well, the theory being, if you say it enough on mass media, people believe it, or what?
It's almost unbelievable, because these is not just interpretation of history, this is just wrong facts being sort of, announced in Europe, where it's very clear that Auschwitz wasn't liberated by Ukrainians, that the USSR did not invade Germany, that it was quite the other way around. But this is what we're seeing on the geopolitical stage, and this is what President Putin touched on in his speech on Red Square this morning.
And at the same time, Kiev, Ukraine is being criticized for allowing far-right movements, neo-Nazi movements to breed and thrive there. 70 years on.
That's right. You heard, the Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko saying that these brigades are considered heroes in Ukraine. This is not something that is being made up or trying to, twist things. These are words that these officials are saying on camera. It's documented and it can be checked. And it's very harrowing.
Why is it? Because people have short memories. Why is it spreading?
Because the Soviet Union's role in the Great Patriotic War is an inconvenient truth or fact for a modern narrative that Russia is an aggressor. How do you paint Russia as an aggressor if it's celebrated as a hero? And so this is the narrative we're seeing in Ukraine, in some Baltic countries, and it's all encouraged by, I'm embarrassed to say it because I'm an American, but the United States.
Too strong a word. You said it yourself, but I wanted to pick you up on it. Too strong a word to say history is trying to be rewritten? Is it going that far?
I think that's exactly what's happening. You have books this year coming out in Ukraine which paint completely different stories of it. And again, every country, of course, is going to see history through its eyes. That is given. 50% of British believe that the British played a major role in World War II. But to completely twist facts is rewriting history, and that is outrageous.
Okay, we're going to take a break in just a minute. Before we do, let's take a look at some live pictures we got coming in now from Berlin. In Berlin, celebrations are continuing today as well. Crowds are lining up to lay flowers at the Soviet War Memorial in Treptow Park there. So that's the latest live you're seeing there. The significance of Treptow Park, Sergei?
It has a huge statue of Butetić. It's a soldier holding a German girl in his hands, and like a savior. This statue has a sword that crushes the swastika. And the Treptow Park, it also has several stelas which reflect or which contain the names of the fallen soldiers and the other important facts which pertain to the Second World War.
All right. Well, the time is now 11:53. Thank you, guys. Don't go away, please, and I hope you can stay with us as well as our live coverage continues of the 70th celebrations to remember the war over Nazi Germany called the Great Patriotic War here in Russia. It'll continue after the break.